Many of the rules modern leaders swear by were written by people who never used electricity. Take Marcus Aurelius writing morning notes in a tent. That habit is the ancestor of today's journaling apps, and structured reflection like that makes decision makers less reactive and better at hard calls. When markets flip overnight, people panic. Sun Tzu's Know Yourself and the Enemy became market research and competitive analysis. Netflix watching viewer data and outmaneuvering Blockbuster is an old strategy in digital clothes, and better information directly leads to smarter bets and survival. When teams fall apart over small slights, productivity collapses. Confucian attention to ritual and clear roles shows up in daily stand-ups, onboarding routines, and simple recognition practices at companies like Toyota. And those repeated rituals build trust that stops tiny problems from becoming crises. Everyone still chases overnight success. The pyramid builders planned across generations and set up systems that outlasted individuals. That long horizon thinking, commit to process, accept slow gains, invest early, explains why firms that reap compounded advantages, like Amazon, beat quick-hit rivals. And in this piece you'll see the stories and small habits that make those ancient rules work today. What the Agora teaches about reputation and trust. In busy markets, people pick sellers based on what others say, long before they ever open their wallets. That's true whether the market is a square full of stalls or a search results page full of listings. Online review systems like Yelp and Amazon concentrate other buyers' experiences into a signal that quickly changes who gets attention and who gets ignored. When feedback is visible, trust becomes a form of currency. Sellers with positive reports attract more customers, and those customers then produce more positive reports, which pulls even more traffic. Trust often comes from small, visible cues that repeatedly show up. A vendor who hands out samples, stacks crates neatly, and answers questions calmly communicates competence without promising anything. On freelance sites, profiles that show completed projects and client comments make hiring less risky. Because people dislike uncertainty, clear signals reduce hesitation. Therefore, consistent presentation produces higher conversion and more referrals. Third-party proof accelerates reputation building by removing doubt. Endorsements from neighborhood blogs, mentions in local food guides, or a verified purchase tag on an online review carry weight because they feel independent. That independence changes behavior. Curious newcomers will wait in line or click add to cart more readily when they see someone else's recommendation. The ripple effect is simple. One respected nod turns casual interest into a steady flow of customers. How sellers handle problems matters just as much as their best moments. Quick, transparent responses to complaints and visible remedies convert angry customers into repeat buyers and prevent negative stories from growing. Platforms that display seller ratings and buyer protections amplify this effect, because a reputation for handling mistakes well becomes a competitive advantage. In practice, shops that show openness and fair returns keep people coming back, while silence or defensiveness drives people away and multiplies distrust. The quiet discipline, daily habits that built empires. Mornings are noisy now, but steady rhythms mattered more than spectacle. Leaders and administrators relied on simple, repeatable habits like taking inventory, reading reports, and holding brief, regular audiences so information flowed without distortion. Because records were kept and revisited, small problems showed up before they became crises. Merchants who balanced ledgers each day avoided surprises at market. That basic accounting habit reduced waste and built trust. Big projects collapsed when routine slipped. Craftsmen used templates and standard measurements so parts fit together without constant rework. When builders and shipwrights repeated the same checks, they cut rework and saved materials, which let a single workshop produce more reliably over time. The logic is straightforward. Consistency reduces error, and fewer errors mean projects finish on time and under budget. Leaders who protected quiet hours made better choices. Private routines, reading reports, dictating decisions to trusted scribes, or taking a short period for reflection, kept attention from being eaten by ceremony and rumor. Because decisions came from a calm, informed place, subordinates could act with clearer direction. Clear delegation and regular reporting meant execution followed intent rather than improvisation. Maintenance beats heroics. Regular inspections, scheduled repairs, and routine resupply are what keep networks, whether roads, fleets, or supply chains, usable. When teams logged conditions and followed checklists, breakdowns became manageable instead of catastrophic. The outcome is predictable. Systems that attended steadily last longer and support bolder ambitions without requiring constant emergency fixes. Networks before networks, reciprocity, mentors, and opportunity. Despite the explosion of online connections, the most consequential career moves still begin with one person vouching for another. Tradespeople handed apprenticeships to promising learners because skill and reputation traveled by recommendation. That same logic shows up in modern firms when a senior engineer introduces a junior one to a hiring manager. Reciprocity acts as portable credibility. When someone owes you a favor, they are more likely to speak up for you in moments that matter, and that often translates directly into interviews, gigs, or referrals. People who connect others deliberately create opportunity, not just contacts. A mentor who teaches a technique and then copies you on an email to a client effectively transfers trust. The mentee gets exposure, and the mentor's endorsement converts a cold interaction into a warm one. Concrete examples include a lab head inviting a postdoc to co-present at a conference, which opens doors to collaborations, or a senior salesperson recommending a junior colleague for a key pitch and thereby changing that junior's career trajectory. Sponsorship differs from casual mentoring in the degree of risk the advocate takes on your behalf. Sponsors put their reputation on the line by nominating you for high-visibility projects or promotions. That's why organizations with active sponsorship programs tend to see faster internal mobility for participants. A sponsor's vote carries weight and creates opportunity that waiting for organic growth rarely produces. At the same time, the implied reciprocity is subtle. Delivering results sustains the sponsor's credibility and completes the social contract. Small, repeatable rituals keep these pre-digital rules alive in a digital age. Sending an introduction that explains why two people should meet, publicly crediting collaborators, and following up after a favor are the modern equivalents of a trusted handshake. When those rituals become routine, trust compounds. Opportunities then move along predictable lines. Favor leads to help, help leads to visibility, visibility leads to invitations, and those invitations are the practical currency of success. Measure twice, act once. Strategy, timing, and practical wisdom. There's always a little hesitation in the room right before a major rollout, because teams remember how a rushed launch once knocked a site offline. Staged deployments, canary releases, and feature flags are used to limit exposure and observe real user reactions before committing everywhere. That practical staging reduces blast radius, so one bug affects a handful of users instead of everyone. When an engineering team lets a small percent of traffic experience a new feature first, they learn about performance under real conditions and avoid massive rollbacks. On the workshop floor, the tension shows up as a breath held over a cut, since material wasted means time and profit gone. Craftspeople adopt templates, mock-ups, and test cuts. Cabinet makers often build a rough prototype panel before committing to the final hardwood. Those dry runs expose misalignments and let them tweak fit, so the finished piece comes together with fewer gaps. The consequence is simple. A little extra effort up front prevents the churn of reworking parts and reordering costly materials. In supply lines, the tension looks different. Inventory either sits idle or a customer walks away because stockout timing was off. Just-in-time systems try to match supply to demand, but rely on accurate lead time estimates and predictable suppliers. Businesses that misjudge those windows find themselves facing rush shipping costs or lost sales. Planning buffers, safety stock, and realistic supplier cadences exist because timing mistakes quickly translate to cash flow pain. Operating rooms and cockpits show the same strain under pressure, and rituals have evolved to manage it. Teams use checklists, pre-mortems, and rehearsals to surface assumptions before the critical moment, so everyone knows the plan and contingencies. Those routines don't eliminate uncertainty, but they turn some unknowns into knowns, which changes how people behave under stress. The result is fewer last-minute surprises and faster, more confident responses when something does go wrong. There's always the pull toward decisive action, and that pressure grows when opportunities are time-limited. Smart teams balance that urge by measuring what matters first, then moving briskly once the signals are clear. A contractor who confirms measurements, lines up materials, and clears a schedule can execute a job in concentrated blocks and finish with fewer callbacks. Small, early investments of attention shape the timing of action, and that practical wisdom is what keeps projects moving forward without repeating avoidable mistakes. Fail fast, learn slowly. How ancient iteration shapes resilience. When teams treat every setback like a scandal, people hide problems and the same mistakes repeat. That's why failing fast isn't a shrug, It's a diagnostic strategy. You put a small piece of work in front of real conditions to see what breaks, and you do it so the cost of the break is low. For example, product teams often launch a simple landing page or a minimal prototype to test whether a value proposition actually resonates, instead of building a full product and learning the hard way. The effect is immediate feedback that shows where assumptions were false, and that feedback shapes the next small bet. But rapid failure by itself is brittle. Quick missteps teach what didn't work. They don't automatically teach how to change organizational habits or cognitive biases. Think of a software rollback after a bad release. The bug is visible and fixed, but unless the team digs into why the test suite missed it or why code review failed, the same class of bug will reappear. That's why teams keep postmortems and root cause analyses separate from the speed of iteration. Fast cycles expose the symptom. Slower, deliberate reflection turns the symptom into a lesson. Slow learning means treating the lesson as something you practice, not something you note and forget. Athletes don't just watch a fail jump and move on. They break the motion into parts, rehearse the weak elements, and integrate the change over many sessions. The same applies to organizations. After an A or B test that shows users dislike a feature, designers and engineers rework the interaction, then run smaller experiments focused on the new assumption. Over time, those focused practices change patterns of decision-making, handoffs, and testing. The result is not just fewer surprises, but a muscle for translating quick failures into durable improvements. When the two approaches live together, resilience becomes an operating norm. Fast experiments reveal fragile assumptions early, and slow, structured learning builds the scaffolding that prevents recurrence. Take engineering teams that use canary deployments and blameless postmortems. A tiny portion of traffic exercises new code so failures are contained, and the postmortem turns that contain failure into institutional memory and updated runbooks. The cause and effect is simple. Early visibility prevents catastrophe, and careful learning prevents the same vulnerability from returning. And over time, those practices change how decisions get made under pressure. Ever notice how small choices feel heavier on some days? We pulled threads from Stoic clarity, Confucian routine, Taoist adaptability, and Buddhist attention and showed how each gives a practical tool. Morning journaling to frame decisions, steady rehearsal to build skill, stepping back to avoid reaction, and a breath check to stay present, so that tiny shifts in habit actually change outcomes at work and in life. You've probably seen one of these in action already. When someone pauses before answering in a meeting, the conversation becomes clearer. When a team keeps the same rituals, trust accumulates. When you practice a short skill every day, progress compounds, cause leads to effect, and the ancient ideas explain why that happens. If this landed for you, there are more down the line. Future episodes will dig into real case studies, a startup that adopted a Stoic morning brief, a leader who rebuilt culture with rituals, short practices you can try tomorrow, and subscribing tells us you'd like that kind of follow-up while your comments help shape what comes next. First, I'm grateful you stayed to the end. Try one small thing this week, notice what changes, and drop a note about it below so we can explore it together in the next video.